ever wonder who was hooking up behind castle walls? Curious about the steamy affairs that had medieval tongues wagging, the Middle Ages might seem prim and proper through the lens of history, but make no mistake, scandal was always brewing. Number 8. Eleanor of Aquitaine and Geoffrey of Anjou. Did a mother-in-law really seduce her son's fiancée? The rumors about Eleanor of Aquitaine and Geoffrey of Anjou rocked the 12th century. Eleanor of Aquitaine was no ordinary woman. As one of the wealthiest and most powerful women in Western Europe, she first married Louis VII of France before having their marriage annulled and quickly marrying Henry of Anjou, who would become King Henry II of England. But before this power couple united whispers spread throughout medieval courts about an alleged affair between Eleanor and Geoffrey of Anjou, Henry's own father. According to chronicler John of Salisbury, Geoffrey had warned his son against marrying Eleanor, claiming she had been intimate with him. The sweetest flower loses its scent and ultimately withers, Geoffrey reportedly told his son in what might be history's most backhanded warning. Whether this affair actually happened remains debated by historians. Some suggest it was merely propaganda to smear Eleanor's reputation, as she was an unusually independent and powerful woman for her time. After all, medieval society didn't look kindly on women who exercised political power, and Eleanor wielded hers masterfully, eventually helping her sons rebel against their father, her husband. The alleged affair caused such a scandal because it violated multiple medieval taboos: adultery, betrayal of one's lord, and even a form of incest by medieval standards, as in-laws were considered family in canonical terms. Even if the rumors were false, the mere suggestion was enough to shock medieval sensibilities and provide juicy court gossip for decades. Number 7. Heloise and Abelard. Can a student-teacher romance ever end well? The passionate affair between Heloise and Abelard proves it rarely does, especially in the 12th century. Peter Abelard was a renowned philosopher and theologian in Paris when he was hired to tutor Heloise, the brilliant niece of Canon Fulbert. What started as intellectual mentorship quickly evolved into one of history's most famous illicit romances. Their passionate letters reveal a deep intellectual and physical connection that defied the strict social barriers of their time. Abelard himself admitted in his autobiographical work, Historia Calamitotum, "The story of my misfortunes, more words of love than of our readings passed between us, and more kissing than teaching. My hands strayed oftener to her bosom than to the pages. Love drew our eyes to look on each other more than reading kept them on our texts." When Heloise became pregnant, they secretly married to appease her uncle. But that wasn't enough for Fulbert, who felt his family had been dishonored. His revenge was brutal. He hired men who broke into Abelard's chamber and castrated him. After this horrific attack, Abelard became a monk, and Heloise, at his insistence, became a nun. Their physical relationship ended, but their intellectual and emotional bond continued through letters that survive today, some of the most eloquent expressions of love in literary history. Their affair scandalized medieval Paris, not just because of their teacher-student relationship, but because Abelard was headed toward a church career that demanded celibacy. Their story captivated the medieval imagination and continues to fascinate us today as a tale of forbidden passion, terrible consequences, and enduring love that transcended physical separation. Number 6. King Edward II and Piers Gaveston. What happens when a king loves his favorite courtier more than his queen? Edward II and Piers Gaveston's relationship nearly tore England apart. From the moment Edward II ascended to the English throne in 1307, his extraordinarily close relationship with Piers Gaveston caused political turmoil. Contemporary chroniclers were shocked by the king's lavish affection toward his companion. The Annals Paulini recorded that Edward loved him beyond measure, while another chronicler claimed the king had adopted Gaveston as his brother, suggesting an intimate bond that medieval society struggled to categorize. Edward's infatuation manifested in dangerous political overreach. He showered Gaveston with extravagant gifts, lands, and titles, even making him Earl of Cornwall, a title usually reserved for members of the royal family. When Edward married Isabella of France, he scandalized the French royal family by giving his new bride's wedding gifts to Gaveston. At Edward's coronation feast, Gaveston reportedly wore royal purple, usually reserved for the king, and was adorned with pearls overshadowing both the king and queen. The barons of England grew increasingly resentful of Gaveston's influence and wealth. They forced Edward to exile his favorite several times, but the king always managed to bring him back. The Chronicle of Lanercost describes how Edward received him with such delight that he gave him kisses and repeated embraces, and he gave himself up so much to his counsels and desires that the earl's indignation was intensified against both of them. Whether their relationship was romantic or sexual remains debated by historians, but it broke medieval expectations of male friendship and proper kingly behavior. The closeness between them threatened the political stability of the realm so much that the barons eventually captured Gaveston and executed him in 1312. Edward's grief was profound, and his inability to protect his favorite showed the limits of even royal power when faced with a relationship that medieval society deemed inappropriate. Edward's story ended tragically. His continued favoritism toward other male companions, combined with political failures, led to his deposition by his wife Isabella and her lover, Roger Mortimer. According to legend, Edward was murdered in Berkeley Castle with a red-hot poker, a particularly gruesome death that some historians believe was specifically chosen to punish the nature of his relationships with men. Number 5. Pope Alexander VI and Julia Farnese. Can the Pope have a mistress? Rodrigo Borgia certainly thought so, shocking Renaissance Europe, with his brazenly public affair with the beautiful teenager Julia Farnese. Before becoming Pope Alexander VI in 1492, Rodrigo Borgia had already fathered several children. But what truly scandalized the Church was his continued relationship with his young mistress after taking holy orders. Julia Farnese was just 19 when she became the papal mistress, and her beauty was so renowned that she earned the nickname La Bella, the Beautiful. The Pope made little effort to conceal the relationship. Renaissance diplomat Gaspare da Verona described Julia as a damsel of such rare beauty that many a poet might well have praised her. The affair was all the more shocking because Julia was married to Orsino Orsini, whose family had close ties to the Borgias. She lived in a palace near the Vatican and had easy access to the Pope's private chambers. Contemporary gossips had a field day with the relationship. The Venetian diplomat, Andrea Badoer, reported that the Pope never goes to bed without a fresh woman. Another ambassador wrote to his masters that some cardinals are so confused that they no longer know where they are. When Julia once left Rome to visit her brother, the Pope became so distressed that he sent armed guards to bring her back. The French king Charles VIII's invasion of Italy resulted in Julia's capture, and Alexander reportedly paid an enormous ransom of 3,000 scudi for her release, proving his attachment was more than casual. The affair produced at least one child, Laura, though Alexander never officially acknowledged her as he had his earlier children. Giulia's influence at the papal court was considerable. Her brother, Alessandro Farnese, was made a cardinal, earning him the nickname Cardinal Petticoat, and he would later become Pope Paul III. The relationship eventually cooled around 1499 or 1500, but by then, Giulia had accumulated wealth and connections that secured her future. The scandal of a pope openly keeping a mistress, however, added fuel to the growing discontent with church corruption that would soon erupt in the Protestant Reformation. Number 4. Abelard and Joan of Arc. Did Joan of Arc have a secret lover? Rumors swirled about the Maid of Orleans and her trusted companion Robert de Baudricourt, threatening her holy mission. Joan of Arc captured the imagination of medieval France as a divinely inspired peasant girl who led armies against the English during the 100 Years' War. Her claim to hear voices from God and her insistence on wearing men's clothing already made her a controversial figure. But whispers about her relationship with Robert de Baudricourt, the military captain who first helped her gain access to the French court, added another dimension to the scandal. When Joan first approached Baudricourt in Vaucouleurs, he dismissed her. But after persistent efforts, she convinced him to provide her with men's clothing, a sword, and an escort to meet the uncrowned king, Charles VII. Their relationship raised eyebrows among courtiers and soldiers alike. How had a simple peasant girl so quickly won the trust and support of an experienced military man? English propaganda seized on these suspicions. During her trial, prosecutors pointedly questioned Joan about her relationship with Baudricourt, insinuating impropriety. Joan maintained that their relationship was purely professional, based on their shared mission to save France. Her insistence on wearing men's clothing, which she claimed was commanded by her voices, further fueled speculation about her sexuality and relationship with male companions like Baudricourt. Medieval society had strict gender roles, and Joan's transgression of these boundaries made her interactions with men inherently suspicious. What makes this alleged forbidden love particularly fascinating is that it likely never happened. Most historians believe the relationship between Joan and Baudricourt was strictly political and military. However, the mere suggestion of impropriety was enough to damage Joan's reputation and contributed to the charges of heresy that ultimately led to her execution. The rumors about Joan and Baudricourt reveal how medieval society viewed women who stepped outside traditional roles. A woman leading armies was so incomprehensible that sexual scandal seemed a more plausible explanation than divine inspiration. Even in death, Joan couldn't escape these whispers, her legacy continuously shaped by the medieval discomfort with female power. Number 3. King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. How far would you go for love? Henry VIII broke with the Catholic Church, upended centuries of tradition, and executed those who opposed him, all to marry Anne Boleyn. Before becoming one of history's most notorious royal couples, Henry and Anne's relationship began as a forbidden courtly flirtation. Anne served as lady-in-waiting to Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon. What started as the king's typical pursuit of a mistress evolved into something far more consequential when Anne refused to become merely another royal conquest. "I would rather lose my kingdom than lose Anne," Henry reportedly declared. Anne's strategy of withholding her affections while maintaining the king's interest worked brilliantly and catastrophically. For 6 years, their unconsummated relationship scandalized the English court. The Spanish ambassador, Eustace Chapuis, loyal to Catherine of Aragon, called Anne the concubine, and reported that she had ensnared the king in her nets. What made their relationship truly forbidden was that Henry was already married. When Pope Clement VII refused to annul Henry's marriage to Catherine, the king took the unprecedented step of breaking England from the Roman Catholic Church, establish himself as the supreme head of the Church of England, and having his new Archbishop of Canterbury grant the annulment. The affair shocked medieval sensibilities on multiple levels. Anne was accused of being a homewrecker, a witch who had seduced the king through sorcery, and even of having an extra finger, a supposed mark of the devil. Her commoner origins despite being from the gentry, made her elevation to queen all the more scandalous. The affair's most shocking aspect was its political and religious fallout. Henry's break with Rome represented the most significant religious upheaval in England since Christianity arrived there. Respected figures like Sir Thomas More and Bishop John Fisher were executed for refusing to acknowledge Henry as head of the church, all because of his determination to marry Anne. Their forbidden love ended as scandalously as it began. After failing to produce a male heir, though she did give birth to the future Queen Elizabeth I, Anne fell from favor. Accused of adultery, incest, and plotting to kill the king, she was beheaded in 1536. Henry married Jane Seymour just days later, suggesting the passionate love that had changed the course of English history had burned out as quickly as it had ignited. Number 2. Tristan and Isolde. Can a love potion excuse adultery? The legendary tale of Tristan and Isolde captivated medieval audiences with its tragic exploration of forbidden passion versus duty. While technically fictional, the romance of Tristan and Isolde reflects medieval anxieties about forbidden love so perfectly that it deserves inclusion. First appearing in literature around the 12th century, this Celtic legend spread throughout medieval Europe, becoming one of the most influential love stories of the Middle Ages. In the most common version, Tristan is a knight who travels to Ireland to bring back Isolde as a bride for his uncle, King Mark of Cornwall. On the journey home, Tristan and Isolde accidentally drink a love potion intended for Isolde and her future husband. Overcome by magical passion, they begin an affair that continues even after Isolde marries King Mark. What made this tale so scandalous yet captivating to medieval audiences was its moral complexity. The lovers are not villains. They are victims of fate and magic, yet their actions breach the most sacred medieval bonds, the loyalty between a knight and his lord, and the sanctity of marriage. The story asks whether love that feels divinely ordained must submit to human institutions, like marriage and feudal loyalty. Medieval religious authorities condemned the story for its sympathetic portrayal of adulterers, yet it remained wildly popular, suggesting a gap between official morality and the romantic imaginations of medieval people. The tale's tremendous influence can be seen in how it shaped later medieval literature, including elements of the Arthurian legends. What's particularly interesting about Tristan and Isolde is how it presents adultery not as mere lust, but as a transcendent, almost spiritual force. When Tristan is mortally wounded and Isolde rushes to heal him, she arrives just after his death and dies of grief beside him, a romantic tragedy that suggested their love, though forbidden, contained something divine. The popularity of this legend across medieval Europe reveals a culture grappling with contradictions between romantic ideals and social order. It shows that even in a society with strict moral codes, forbidden love held a powerful allure that could not be entirely suppressed. Number 1. Lancelot and Guinevere. What happens when the greatest knight falls in love with his king's wife? The affair between Lancelot and Guinevere didn't just break hearts, it destroyed Camelot itself. Though fictional, no medieval forbidden romance captured the imagination quite like that of Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere. Their affair embodied the central conflict of courtly love, the tension between romantic passion and feudal loyalty. Lancelot, introduced into Arthurian legend by the 12th century French poet Chrétien de Troyes, was portrayed as the perfect knight, brave, loyal, and virtuous in all things except his illicit love for his king's wife. Medieval audiences were both scandalized and captivated by how the best of men could be undone by forbidden desire. Their affair violated multiple medieval taboos: adultery, which was considered not just a sin but a crime; treason against the king, punishable by death; and the betrayal of the chivalric code that demanded knights protect the honor of their lords. Yet medieval romances often portrayed their love sympathetically, showing how even the noblest hearts could be torn between passion and duty. In Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, completed around 1470, the discovery of their affair directly triggers the fall of Camelot. When Lancelot is caught in the Queen's chambers, he fights his way out, killing several knights in the process. This forces Arthur to condemn Guinevere to burn at the stake for treason, though Lancelot rescues her. The ensuing civil war between Arthur and Lancelot's factions leaves the kingdom vulnerable to usurpers. What made this story resonate so powerfully in medieval culture was how it dramatized the conflict between competing value systems, the emerging ideals of romantic love versus the established ethics of feudal loyalty. The affair asked questions that troubled medieval minds. Does personal happiness outweigh social duty? Can true love excuse betrayal? Is passion a divine gift or a destructive force? The romance also explored the double standards of medieval gender roles. While both lovers committed the same sin, Guinevere typically faced harsher judgment in medieval tellings. In some versions, she ends her days in a convent, seeking forgiveness for her role in Camelot's destruction. Lancelot, though fallen from perfect knighthood, remained an admirable, tragic figure. The enduring popularity of Lancelot and Guinevere's forbidden love attests to medieval society's complicated relationship with romance. While officially condemning adultery, medieval culture simultaneously celebrated passionate love that transcended social boundaries as long as the lovers ultimately paid the price for their transgression. Was forbidden love worth the price? As these 8 scandals show, medieval passion often came with devastating consequences: exile, execution, castration, or the fall of kingdoms. Yet would any of these lovers have chosen differently if given another chance? Perhaps that's why these stories continue to fascinate us. The eternal question of whether forbidden fruit tastes all the sweeter even when it leads to paradise lost.